Okay, let's get this started. Hello, everyone. My name is Ricky, and I'm a assistant project manager for CAN-ARX, and we are very glad to have all of you joining. And this is Roxy. Roxy, feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Roxy, the project manager for CAN-ARX, and I'm just going to share my screen here so that you can all hopefully see my slides. Ricky, are we all good?
Yep, we should be
Great.
good.
So this is the third of four Q&A sessions that we're running in order to give you an opportunity to ask questions about our newest competition called CAN-ARX. This will include what the competition is, what the different streams are for applying. So we have 3 different categories, including primary team, delegate team, and the health study, and the application process, as well as 2 opportunities for you to ask questions. So we have another session coming up at 4 p.m. Pacific time or 7 p.m. Eastern time today. And you can also check out some previous Q&As that we've run on June 16th. So first of all, before we begin talking about CAN-ARX, I just wanted to give a brief overview of who SEDS-Canada is. So we really believe that Canada's future space force and space sector really depends on students right now. And we believe that by providing students with experiential learning opportunities, such as projects, research programs, and professional development opportunities, we can really strengthen this workforce of the future and strengthen Canada's future in space overall. These experiential learning opportunities are really relevant to all 3 of the different sectors, both governmental, industrial, and institutional within Canada. So we are fully student run. We have a student board of directors, and we're fully nonprofit and federally incorporated in Canada. And as I mentioned, our main goal is to inspire and empower students and to encourage them to join the space industry. So we have a member-based organization, and we have members in almost every province. We're missing PEI, Newfoundland, Northwest Territories, Yukon, and Nunavut. So if you do have friends in these provinces and territories, please let them know about SEDS-Canada. And we really create a platform for students to advance Canada's space sector and learn valuable skills for your future careers. So for this Q&A outline, as I mentioned, there'll be 2 opportunities for questions. First, I'm going to talk about the CAN-ARX project and give a brief overview. And then after that, after a break for questions, we'll talk about the different options for participation and how to apply. So if you have questions, please toss them in the chat on YouTube, and we will get to them. So CAN-ARX stands for the Canadian Arctic Research Expedition. My name's Roxy, and as I mentioned earlier, I am the project manager for CAN-ARX, and I have a great team with me that have really spearheaded this opportunity. We also have partnerships with Western University's Institute for Earth and Space Exploration, as well as our 2 community partners, the Space Generation Advisory Council and Astrius. So what is CAN-ARX? So this is an opportunity for students to design and test either an experiment or conduct a research project in the Arctic in one of 4 research areas. We've selected planetary science, atmospheric science, resource utilization and food production, and remote healthcare as our 4 research topics. So the project that you propose has to fit into one of these categories. We then select based on a rubric of for the proposals. We'll choose 1 team of students to actually conduct their experiment in the Arctic. So the objectives of the competition, first of all, is to allow students to conduct research in a novel setting. Working in the Arctic is both very expensive and quite rare. And so we're hoping that the students that win this competition will get to experience a completely new environment that they've never been in. Performing meaningful science and publishing their work. This is something that's really important to us at SEDS-Canada to build on past research and actually contribute to the body of knowledge through peer-reviewed work. Next, connecting with local community through a vast engagement plan. We have a lot of opportunities for the winning team to both contribute and spearhead their own community outreach. And we also have our own outreach planned both before we conduct the expedition in the Arctic and during the expedition. Building connection with professionals in relevant industries. This is a huge one and really important for building your CV and also for building your own network once you start thinking about what career you'd like in the future. Building that network with professionals in the field is really critical. And lastly, honing communication and presentation skills. This is also super important for future careers. You will often have to present your work and explain to people what you're doing and why you're doing it and why people should support your projects. So this is going to be really critical for future careers, and we hope that through participation in this competition that you can really hone those skills. And lastly, the Canadian space sector is really looking, particularly the Canadian Space Agency, is looking for a body of highly qualified personnel in Canada. And so we are helping to develop that, that group of students that can be those highly qualified personnel, or what we call HQP, for future careers in STEM fields. So there were 4 options for where we will be conducting the research in the Arctic. And these were selected, down-selected from a long list of research areas in the Arctic based on their proximity to local communities and access to things like high-speed internet. So the first one, and these are all color-coded here, is Kluane Lake Research Station, which is about a 2-hour drive from Whitehorse in the Yukon. We also have the Western Arctic Research Station in Inuvik, Northwest Territories, the Canadian High Arctic Research Station in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, and lastly, the PCSP Logistics Hub located in Resolute Bay, Nunavut. And so you can actually zoom into a map located on our website to find out more about the boundaries for your potential research in all of these sites. If you are writing a proposal for CAN-ARX as a student team, you get the option of selecting one of these sites, or you can also mention that maybe your research is relevant for more than one site, but it must fit with at least one of these research sites. The timeline for the competition, proposals are due coming up pretty soon, July 18th. And we have a 2-week period where we will review the proposals along with a group of subject matter experts and reviewers. So in early August 2021 is when you would expect to hear back if you've been selected. And then after that, we work with the winning team to apply for the Canadian Space Agency's FAST grant. So this is the way that we're going to be funding the expedition in the north. The CSA's FAST grants are quite large and will provide us with ample funding to take the winning team of students, as well as some folks from Western University's Institute for Earth and Space Exploration, as well as a few SEDS-Canada members. So once we've submitted our application, the winning team will also, throughout that period, be working on their experiment. So this involves actually building the hardware, testing the software, all of these different things. You'll have about 9 months to work on that. And throughout this period, there will be several stages or milestones where the team will meet with subject matter experts to make sure that everything is on track and provide some feedback. In January 2022 is when we expect to hear back from the Canadian Space Agency's FAST program to see if we've won the funding or not. So this is a really important fact about this competition, is that because it is a very large endeavor and requires a lot of funding, if we are unable to secure Canadian Space Agency funding, then it is the expedition itself will be pushed back at least 1 year. So just keep that in mind, but we do expect that the winning team does work on their project even before we find out if we have the funding. And the expedition window for going to the Arctic is about May 2022, contingent upon us getting the Canadian Space Agency funding. In terms of what you would actually be doing in the Arctic, this would be approximately 2-week expedition with the potential to be extended. But when you write your proposal, it must fit within this 2-week period for your experiment. And we are only going to be taking 6 members from the winning team. So even if your team is larger than 6 members, do keep in mind that due to funding restrictions, we can only take 6 members from your team. There will also be Western University folks. We're going to be assigning the principal investigator, so that's sort of like the expedition leader, one of the professors at Western University, and a few members from SEDS-Canada. So after arrival, there will be orientation and safety training. This is really important. So even if you haven't worked in the Arctic before, we will ensure that you are fully trained and capable of working in the field. There will also be some prep days where you can prepare your experiment, given the fact that you'll likely be shipping your experiment disassembled by plane to the expedition site. It might require some assembly on site. So we have lots of time for that. We also have some field days planned. We also have a few days dedicated to lectures from local community members, as well as conducting outreach in local schools. More field days, data analysis, if time permits, and more outreach. So this is really sort of a broad outline of what we are envisioning for the 2-week campaign, but it will obviously be reworked based on the winning team's needs. So this is just sort of a placeholder for now. So I will take this opportunity now to stop here and see if there's any questions related to what I've discussed already. If you have any general questions about the expedition sites or the timeline or the funding or anything like that, would be happy to answer them now. And if there aren't any questions, we can also move on to the application process, but I will stop here, and maybe Ricky, if you've seen any questions in the chat, please let me know.
Yeah, that was an excellent presentation for sure. We don't have any questions in the chat just yet, so I think we can just go over a few previously asked questions that are more frequent. So I think a big one, I think we should. One is, does SEDS have any restrictions on taking samples other than weight and size, or is it just research station specific?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And we're very, very mindful of any restrictions by the territories themselves, who sometimes will regulate what can be sampled from the ground or from streams or from any sort of environmental, even air or anything like that. So we will obviously be applying for research license, and within that license, we will outline exactly what is being taken from the environment and what precautions we will take to ensure that it's taken sustainably and there's no sort of waste left behind, anything like that. So yes, we're very much conscious of the restrictions, but we'll have to see with the actual research license process and just work with the winning team to see exactly what that they're looking to sample. But for the proposal stage, there is no restrictions right now on what we're allowing people to sample or not. So just propose whatever idea that you have in your proposal, and then we will we will investigate that when we are ready to submit our research license.
Yep. Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, I think just emphasis that, yeah, SEDS doesn't have any restrictions necessarily, but it will be according to the research site that we decide upon. Mm-hmm. All right. And I think another one is a team allowed to bring on another member from outside the institution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is outlined in the handbook, the sort of rules around the structure of your team. And so we definitely encourage, actually, for your team to find members from other institutions. So we call those sort of like collaborative institutions. So where the team leader's institution is called sort of like the main or primary institution, we definitely encourage you to look beyond that and collaborate with other institutions as well. Just make sure to meet the criteria in terms of your team leader being assigned to one institution, and make sure that you meet all the rules that are outlined in the handbook.
All right. Yeah, that sounds great. Excellent. So yeah, I think no questions yet, but I think we can just continue with the slideshow presentation.
Sure, great, awesome. So thank you, Ricky. And so let's move on to the different application processes and the different ways that you can participate in this competition. So at the start, I mentioned that there's sort of 3 streams, and the first one is the CAN-ARX primary team. So when I was talking about those 6 student members that would be actually going to the Arctic and conducting the research or their experiment, that is the primary team. So this can be composed of any student in Canada studying at a post-secondary institution. So this includes colleges, cégep, universities. Part-time or full-time is totally fine. You don't have to be a Canadian citizen to be part of the team. As long as you are enrolled in a Canadian institution, you are eligible. And so we have sort of 2 different project streams as well. So you can propose an engineering project, which involves building hardware and then testing that hardware in the Arctic. And there's also a science stream. So this is more, a hypothesis-based project where you're not necessarily building your own hardware, but perhaps using already existing technologies or hardware to then conduct your research in the Arctic and answer a science question. So we really want to encourage folks from outside of engineering programs to participate. And so that's why we've sort of split it into those 2 categories. And it also makes it more fair when we go to actually judge and score these proposals, because the engineering stream and science stream have different criteria for them. So as I've mentioned, we have a student handbook for this primary team, which you can find on our website, seds.ca/project/CAN-ARX. So what's involved to be part of the primary team is, first, obviously, form your team. You're going to need at least 6 students. You can have as many as you want, but the minimum is 6. Find a faculty advisor. So that's someone at your primary institution who is, it could be a researcher, a professor, someone like that who can guide you as you develop your project. Write your proposal. So this is the document that you'll be submitting to CAN-ARX at SEDS.ca by July 18th. And that proposal is what is going to be marked and assessed by a group of subject matter experts, and will determine whether you're selected. So that's the primary team. The next stream that we have available is the delegate team. So this is open to individuals, so you don't need to form a team. And this is through just a simple Google form on our website. And so the criteria for this is that you're a student aged between 17 and 25, and you are a resident of one of the territories. That's the Yukon, Northwest Territories, or Nunavut. And have an interest in space, or are ready to just share your knowledge and are ready to learn some new skills. So the delegate team is going to be in charge of a subsystem of the primary team. And I've illustrated this in an example here, where we have the CAN-ARX primary team sort of at the top, and then it gets divided into several subsections. So you might have a few students in charge of mission systems, electronics and control, and then the delegate team would have its own subsystem that it would be responsible for. So this is has to be something that can be worked on remotely, because the primary team may or may not be from the same location as the delegate team or delegate individuals. And so this has to be work that can be done remotely. So if we get multiple applications from individuals, that's what will form the team of many individuals living in the North will form that delegate team. So for this, like I mentioned, there is a Google form that will ask you information on It'll ask for your CV, ask why you're interested, just a few questions that you'll have to fill out, and then you just hit submit, and that is it. No proposal involved with that, but it also is due on July 18th. The last option is for graduate students or researchers who already have a funded study in progress, but that they need human subjects to gather data. So a lot of work in the Arctic revolving around human health is being done, working in remote and austere environments. It does have a lot of insight for space exploration in the future. And so we're hoping that we can get a project that's already funded that can include our winning student team that will be traveling to the Arctic as subjects in their study. Really important that the researcher already has an institutional review board application on happening already, so that we can include the students easily into that already existing IRB. So if you're interested in submitting an application for this is also through a Google form on our website, which will ask a few questions about your proposal for your research and a bit of details. So a few things to keep in mind for this is that the research that you want to conduct with our participants must not interfere with the expedition itself. So the students have to still be able to conduct their own research while they're in the Arctic. And it should be more or less a passive data collection process, because we will not be sending this researcher to the Arctic. We will have the students or folks from SEDS-Canada actually conduct the research on your behalf. Unless you have funding yourself to come with us during our expedition. But just a note that we don't have any funding to support the researchers' travel and accommodations. Hopefully it's just something very passive and very simple to conduct in the Arctic. So for all three of these different streams, there are specific handbooks for each one. So the primary team handbook, the delegate team information booklet, and the health study information booklet. And these can all be found on our website, seds.ca/can-ARX. And it has all the information you need, such as constraints or the process for applying, and any templates that you might need as well, specifically for the primary team. If you're doing an engineering project, we might ask you to fill out templates for power, budget, and mass budget, just so we know the size and scale of your experiment and how you're going to be transporting it to the Arctic. So in terms of application tips for the primary team, please make sure to fully read in detail the handbook. The handbook really is a valuable resource that I can't go over in great detail in a 30-minute Q&A, but that will likely address 99% of your questions. So before you reach out to us to ask a specific question, read the handbook, and that also includes a rubric in it that will describe in detail exactly what information you need to include in your proposal for it to be properly assessed by the subject matter experts. So please follow the rubric when you're writing your proposal. For the delegate team, because it is a much simpler application process, we only ask that you read every question carefully and make sure to answer them all to the best of your ability and provide all the documentation that's required for the application. And then lastly, for the health study, also make sure to address everything in the rubric. The handbook specifically for the health study outlines the unique criteria for the health study. As I mentioned, things like passive data collection and not interfering with the main objectives of the campaign. So that's all included in the rubric for the health study. Also, when in doubt, ask a mentor. The more eyes that you get on your application, usually the better it will be, because sometimes you can miss things because you've just read it so many times. You just aren't actually seeing any of the smaller mistakes that you might have that might be in your application. So get your friends and family and mentors to review your application before you submit. And if you've read the documents very carefully, the handbooks, and you find that it still doesn't answer your question, please send us an email at CAN-ARX@SEDS.ca or ask them in the chat right now. So everything you need to apply is on our website, SEDS.ca/CAN-ARX, or you can just Google CAN-ARX. I think we are the only CAN-ARX out there on the internet. So on the website, as I mentioned, you'll find all the handbooks and booklets that you'll need, depending on which stream that you're applying to, templates that can be found and downloaded, application forms for the Delegate Team and Health Study streams, which are just Google Forms, as I mentioned, and then an interactive map of all the different field sites that you can choose from, and also the competition timeline. So the deadline to apply is coming up soon, July 18th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So keep in mind the time zone here and make sure that if you're on Pacific time, just adjust the time there. And if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to us. So now I will stop here, and we have about 4 minutes remaining for any last minute questions.
Great. Thank you, Roxy, for the excellent presentation. That was fantastic. Yeah, so no questions in the chat just yet. So I think we can just continue with asking some previous questions just so that people know what have people asked so far, and just so it's more informative. So the first one is, would delegate team members go on the expedition? And if so, are they part of the 6 people who make up the expedition crew? I think there's a lot of confusion on that.
Yeah, so the delegate team is not part of the 6 members of the primary team. We don't anticipate that delegate members will be on the expedition, but we are assessing that. And based on funding, we may be able to support. And also depending on how many delegate team members there are and how close they are to the site that we end up choosing. So there's 4 research site possibilities, but we're only going to one of them based on wherever the winning student team chooses. So if delegate team members happen to be in the same location as where we're anticipating to do our research, then it would be much simpler. You know, we can definitely discuss including them, but they are not part of those 6 members for the primary team.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's a great answer. So the next one that we have is, if our field work requires some specific safety training or like field guide, how do we incorporate them into our budget?
So for the budget, we are just asking for as much information as you have for now. And then so there aren't that many details required yet for the budget because we haven't yet applied for the funding through the Canadian Space Agency. So regarding the budget, just follow the rubric that's in the handbook and don't include any information that's not relevant to the rubric. Just make sure you hit all the things that we're asking for in the rubric. And then in terms of specifics, we can assess that once we start writing the application for funding.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. So I think that sums it up pretty well. I think, yeah, no other questions in the chat. If you are watching and you have any other questions, please feel free to just check our
Ricky, are you still there?
/CAN-ARX, and then you'll find it right there. Or you can always send us an email at CAN-ARX@SEDS.ca. So that's CAN-ARX@SEDS.ca. It's on the screen right now as well. But other than that, I think that's it. Roxy, what do you think?
Yeah, sounds great. We're right on time. So we will have our 4th and last session later today. So for those who weren't able to join today, they can join in that one. So it'll be the same presentation. But thank you everyone so much for joining. And yeah, we'll see you again later today. Thanks, Ricky.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.